everyone, my name is Steph and this is the Novelty Corner, and today I have a Books Beside My Bed video for you. If you are new here, I film one of these every week where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading, and if you're very familiar with the series, welcome back. This is my reading week from the 31st of January until the 6th of February. I read 8 different things this week. 2 were novella/short story type texts, and the rest were all novels. I read a total of 2,076 pages, and my yearly reading total is 49 books for the year. This week I read 1 1-star book, 1 3-star book, 1 3.5-star book, 2 4-star books, and 3 4.5-star books. The first book that I read this week was Danger Zone, which is book 1 in the Elite by Brooke Blaine and Ella Frank. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. It is a male-male romance. There are content warnings for graphic sex and also a cliffhanger ending, so if you don't like that, beware of it. I read this book. It was a recommendation from Jen from the Book Refuge, so I thought I'd pick it up and just give it a shot. It is a pilot romance between Mateo and Grant, who are both exceptional Navy pilots. They've been accepted into an exclusive program for Navy pilots that essentially tests them, challenges them, and ranks them at the end. The two have a real hate-to-love relationship within this first book, and like I said, it does end in a cliffhanger, so you don't get your HEA at the end of this book. It was fun and entertaining and a bit of an adrenaline read. I may continue the series, I haven't decided yet, but for what it was worth, it was a good read on a Sunday. That same day I also read In Vino by Alexis Hall. This is Spy's book 3.5. It is a novella/short story that features one of the side characters from his book For Real, which I read earlier in January. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. Alexis Hall is an incredible writer. He is also queer, so this is a known voices story. And this book has content warnings for alcoholism, abuse of power from a person in a position of trust, and also insensitive comments about AIDS. And I really appreciate that Alexis Hall included all of these trigger warnings at the beginning of this novella. I love authors who do that. This story follows Jasper, who is an old friend of Laurie, who is one of the main characters in For Real. And after Jasper witnesses Laurie's growing affection for his new dominant, Toby, he sort of goes on a bit of a bender, and he's very drunk, and he ends up having sex with a student, he's a college professor, in his office. And that's where the abuse of power comes in. Teacher-student relationships are not really my thing, but this one is not technically a romance. There's no HEA at the end of it, but it is really well written and really powerful for what it is conveying, the fact that Jasper is this desperately unhappy man, and it really comes through in that short story/novella. So I do recommend it. I think you can get it through Alexis Hall's website or his newsletter. My 1-star read was Seduced by Two by Cat Crimson. This is an MFM menage story, which I can't even remember where I saw it recommended, but I picked it up because it was really short. And I was curious to see, because it had actually, I think it had really polarizing reviews, and I wanted to see where I sat on it. And I'm firmly in the camp of people who didn't enjoy this one. This one has content warnings for questionable consent, and also tying into that, applying someone's girlfriend with alcohol in order to get consent. So be aware of that going into it. This is mostly why I didn't like it. It is the story of Max and Maya, who are partners, and they both have an attraction to Max's best friend Foster, who is a musician. And Foster comes over one night, and they've all been drinking, and the three end up having sex. There is a real power imbalance, I think, between Maya and both men, and also I question the consent. It's not even dubious consent, it is questionable consent, and that's my problem with it. After that, I read Wicked Deeds on a Winter's Night by Kresley Cole. This is book 3 in the Immortals After Dark series. I am reading IAD to participate in the readathon hosted by Charles and Izzy. And of the 3 books I've read so far, this one was possibly my favourite, but for a very strange reason. I ended up giving this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. There are content warnings for graphic sex, graphic violence, and my own personal content warning for an overbearing alpha male who does not grovel enough in this book at all. So that's my own personal opinion on that last one, but there you go. So we met our main characters, Bowen and Mariquetta, in book 2. In that book, they had both joined the High, which is like an amazing race for magical treasures. And in that book, Bowen ended up trapping Mariquetta in a cave with incubus and demons and left her there. And she cursed him, so he basically could not recover or regenerate from his injuries because he's a Lycae or werewolf. And then at the very end of the book, he got trapped in a cave himself. That's where we begin our book. And Bowen is rescued from his cave. Then he finds out that Mariquetta, who he had believed was an immortal witch, is actually a human witch who hasn't made the transition to immortality yet. So he's left her trapped in this cave with no supplies for a significant period of time. And he's inadvertently caused this crisis between all of the immortal groups such as the Lycae, the witches, the Valkyrie, the demons, the Fae, because he's trapped other people in the cave as well. And of course this is a problem. So once he finds out that Mariquetta is human, he has this moment of crisis because he had no idea that she was human and races off to go and try and rescue her. Meanwhile, Bowen's motivation for joining the High was so that he could resurrect his dead mate from, you know, hundreds of years ago. And he's still hung up on her, but believes that Mariquetta has bewitched him because suddenly he's attracted to Mariquetta. He doesn't believe that that's real. He believes that that's part of one of the curses she's put on him. Meanwhile, Mariquetta is a total badass, and she's the entire reason that I loved this book. Well, her and Nyx, because Nyx is just fantastic in a totally bonkers way. Mariquetta is a young witch. She's in her early 20s. She hasn't transitioned to immortality yet. She is coming into her powers and she is incredibly powerful, but she has no control. She also deserves better than Bowen, who can't make up his mind and doesn't grovel enough at any point in this book. She should have made him suffer for a lot longer. That's all I'm going to say on that. Then I read Blaze of Memory by Nalini Singh. This is book 7 in the Psy-Changeling series, and I'm rereading the entire series, both for a in-depth review series here on my channel, but also for the Psy-Changeling readathon that I'm co-hosting. I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars, and I ended up upping my rating from the first time I read it. Not necessarily because of the romantic pairing, because I do still have some issues there. So the only content warning that I can really give for this book, aside from some sex on the page, but I don't think it's quite as graphic as any of the other books that I read this week, is that the hero, Devraj Santos, is a bit of an overbearing alpha male. I appreciated him more in this book, but he's still overbearing, so be aware of that going into it. So this is the story of Devraj Santos, who is a human who runs the Shine Foundation, which is a foundation that looks after the descendants of the Forgotten, who were the Psy who left the Psy-Net at the beginning of Silence, and their children are mostly human, but some of them do have Psy abilities, including Dev. And we begin this story with Dev finding a Psy woman dumped on his doorstep, and he takes her to the Shine Foundation to recover. She wakes up, she has no memory of who she is, and eventually we find out that her name is Ekaterina, and she was a side character in book 4. Ekaterina wakes up, she is triggered by her own name, and so they come up with a new name for her. They call her Katya. And she is sort of trapped in her own mind, and she's still connected to the Psy-Net, but she actually can't access it. She's getting the biofeedback that she needs, and that's all. Katya has been kidnapped and tortured, and everyone believes that she's dead, and so that makes Dev very wary of her because he believes that she could possibly be a sleeper agent who has been programmed to do something, and so he basically doesn't let her out of his sight. And at the same time, he's very drawn to her and he wants to protect her, even though he's also very concerned that she could do serious damage to the Shine Foundation. I will talk more about this in more depth in a specific video on this book, but what I really appreciated on this second reread, which is what upped my rating, was how much work Nalini Singh does in this book to build up future books, which I think the first time that you read it, you don't really appreciate that because you haven't read anything, but on reread, you can see where everything comes into play and where different things start. And then I went on a bit of a Rebekah Weatherspoon kick this week. It is Black History Month in the States, and there are a whole lot of readathons taking place, encouraging people to read Black authors. The one that I have sort of been loosely following is the Black Author Readathon. I'm not actually following any of the prompts. I'm just trying to read as many Black romance authors as I can. I was going to pick up one book by Rebekah Weatherspoon for the Taboo Book Club, hosted by Tamika, and this month by Izzy as well. And then I fell down a little bit of a spiral and I read 3 books in a series plus a bonus book by Rebekah Weatherspoon. So the book that the Taboo Book Club is reading was Haven by Rebekah Weatherspoon, which is book 1 in the Beards and Bondage series. This is a romance book featuring a Black heroine. Claudia Cade is camping out in the woods with her brother, and then they are attacked by serial killers and her brother is killed, and she just barely escapes when she stumbles across a house on the mountain, which is the home of Shepard Olson, and he kills one of the men and ends up taking Claudia to the hospital in town. There's a little bit of the process of the case and it being closed, and then a few months later Claudia ends up returning to visit Shep because she doesn't quite know what she's feeling, and she had a connection to him. He saved her and she just needs to see him, and the two end up falling into this relationship. Shep is a loner, he lives alone and he prefers it that way. He's also a dominant, and so this book has elements of BDSM threaded through it. I think that element was done really well. Mostly this book is about Claudia trying to find a way to work through her trauma and move forward, and she's not quite sure what the best way to do that is, and so their relationship has ups and downs as they both try to sort that out because Shep has his own issues that he is dealing with. So this book does have content warnings for PTSD, panic attacks, death of a sibling obviously from the start of the book, BDSM, and quite graphic sex on page. But overall the book was really fantastic and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I did really enjoy it, and as a result I wanted to keep reading the next 2 books in the series. So then I read Sanctuary, which is book 2 in the Beards and Bondage series by Rebekah Weatherspoon. This book also has content warnings for PTSD. There is also a breaking and entering scene at the start of the book where the main heroine is attacked by someone who has taken out a hit on her, and also graphic sex and some light BDSM elements woven into it. The heroine is a dominant, and that was really cool to see because you don't often get female dominance in romance stories, so I really love that. This book does feature a black hero and a black heroine, and also the hero is somewhere on the ASD spectrum. It's not specified and he's never been diagnosed, but he believes that he is on the spectrum, so that is also part of the story, which was really great to see. I really liked Silas as a character. This book is about Elizabeth, or Liz, who is the best friend of Claudia from the first book, and she is a corporate lawyer who is attacked in her apartment one evening by a former client who has taken out a hit on her because he was unhappy with the outcome of one of their cases together. In order to keep her safe, one of her work colleagues, Scott, offers to let her stay at his family's farmhouse. What he doesn't tell her is that his twin brother Silas lives there, and he and Silas have issues with each other. However, Silas understands that Liz is in trouble, and so he takes her in. And after a tense few days, the two actually begin entering into a sexual relationship with one another, and they're not thinking it's anything serious, and they're really learning how to negotiate with each other because Liz is a dominant and Silas has never been dominated by a woman before. I really liked the way that their relationship developed because there was a lot of open communication between the two of them, and yes, they still had some miscommunication issues, but they were still talking the whole time and they ended up finding their happy balance, and they do feature in subsequent books as well, which is great because they were 2 really fantastic characters, and I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. And then the 3rd book in the Beards and Bondage series is Harbour, which a lot of people were talking about last year when it was released. This book is an MMF menage romance story between 3 black characters, and it was honestly fantastic. I really, really enjoyed the emotional character development between all 3 of these characters in the story. There are content warnings for cheating that happens off the page, not with the main characters, but with their partners cheating on them. You have death of partners, there is graphic sex. This one is much heavier on the BDSM elements than the previous 2 books, in my opinion. There are discussions of death and trauma, and also we have characters who have unsupportive parents in here as well. So this is the story of Brooklyn Lewis, who is the sister of Liz from the 2nd book, and also Vaughn Coleman and Christopher Shaw. The 3 end up meeting when Brooke's fiance and Vaughn and Shaw's girlfriend are found murdered in a motel in the midst of having an affair. So the 3 of them have never met before. They had no idea that their partners were cheating on them, and as a way of trying to process their grief, they connect. And Liz finds out that the 2 men and their partner are in a polyamorous relationship. The way that she deals with her emotions is that she uses quite a bit of humor to get through a situation, and she ends up propositioning them the first time that she meets both of them together, and it's half a joke and half not, and it's her way of coping. They part ways and they don't really talk for a while, and then they end up coming back to one another because they're drawn to each other. They decide to have a weekend and give it a shot. Now in this relationship, Shaw is the dominant, Vaughn is a switch but is mostly submissive, and Brooklyn doesn't really know what she is initially. They begin to explore their relationship with one another. And because we're dealing with 3 characters who have suffered trauma and betrayal by people that they love, they really have to learn to open up to one another, and that is a big part of the story. And I really loved that emotional aspect of the story, and so I gave this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. And then finally, the last book I read by Rebekah Weatherspoon was Xeni, which is book 2 in the Loose Ends series, which is all sort of the side characters getting their HEAs. And I know she has specific reading orders for things, but I'm just going to be picking up whichever ones sound interesting to me. This book has content warnings for death of a family member. It also has strained family relationships in it, main characters with unsupportive parents, mentions of abortion and miscarriage, and again graphic sex scenes. Xeni in this book is a black heroine. She ends up meeting Mason, who is the hero of the story and is a Scotsman, at the reading of her aunt's will. Now we met Mason in Sanctuary, so he was one of the side characters. He's actually Silas's cousin. The reason that Xeni and Mason meet at the reading of the will is because Xeni has been left most of her aunt's fortune, and also Mason has been left some money because he was her aunt's friend, but they have a condition placed on receiving this inheritance. They have to get married because Sable, Xeni's aunt, believed that they would make a good match. So the two end up deciding to go through with it, and they say, well, we'll get married and we'll have the minimum expectation for marriage is 30 days. So they get married, they have a really lovely party with everyone, and then they begin to lean into this relationship, even if it's only for the 30-day period. And they begin to know each other and understand each other and help each other out in their own respective ways. And it was just a beautiful, gorgeous story. I really loved it. It was great. So those are all the books that I read in the last 7 days. I had a really great romance reading week. It was really fun. And I'm very, very keen to pick up more Rebekah Weatherspoon books, although I am going to try and read some different Black authors in the next couple of weeks as well. So stay tuned. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you are staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.